Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester once again with you to look back on all the action in British basketball over the last week. And we'll start in the European games, and we always look at the women's games as well. But I must confess, full disclosure, I haven't had chance, such has been my weekend, to watch this one back. And a 4 o'clock start meant I couldn't watch it in real time. But it finished London Lions 61. Keltern Stars 68. So you're going to have to do the heavy lifting on this one.
Well, I got the second half because I finished work and I managed to get it when I got home. They blew it, and I know they know that they blew it. I'm not saying that in a bad way or an aggressive way. They missed a ton of layups in this game. They just could not make a layup, and it struck me whilst I was watching it. You know, there is the fundamental difference between women's basketball and men's basketball is that it is harder to score. And it's harder to score because you have to be more skillful in the women's game to score. Now, anybody the athleticism in the men's game covers a multitude of sins, covers a multitude of failings, if I can put it that way. Because basically, if you're within 4 feet of the rim, you're dropping the ball over the hoop. You're dropping the ball in. In the women's game, it was, this game laid it out that if you're not quite focused, you're not quite locked in, and being locked in is like, you couldn't explain it to somebody. There's nothing tangible about being locked in and not being locked in. You would never see it on the front of the shirt or the way that they were. But just when you miss layups and you get cheap little fouls, Shanice Beckford-Norton picked up 2 fouls in the first 2.5 minutes of this game. And the second one was horrible. It was literally 75 feet away from the basket, going for a reach when they weren't even fast breaking. And that told me that, this is a team that's been beating everybody by 50 in the BBL. That's won 2 games in a row. And they just didn't come in, and it's playing the team that's bottom of the group. And they didn't come in with the laser-like focus that you need to win. And that's why playing in Europe isn't, first cliche of the night, a marathon, not a sprint. It is. And the fact that they got good shots, they got great shots throughout the game. But the nadir of it was that they were down, I think, 5 with 1.5 minutes to go, and they ran a beautiful little back screen play. Kennedy Leonard's wide open under the basket, wide open. Nobody within, 3 within a 30-foot barge pole of touching her. On a right hand, you just got to drop it in and put the layup up, and it bounces 3 times and bounces out. And it's like, how can you keep? I think they got back to 1 point at one point.
They did. Leonard had made a 3 with 1:18 to go to make it 61-62.
And at that point, I think it was maybe in the play before that she blew the layup, but that was kind of the nadir. That was like, this isn't going to happen. And it's the basketball gods are also there. I'm a firm believer in basketball gods. I'm a firm non-believer in gods of any other nature. Before anybody gets all kind of, I'm agnostic. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. But in the basketball gods, if you miss shots that you should make, then it doesn't work out for you. No. And Keltern knocked down the shots, and they've actually now got a shot.
Yeah.
Now won the head-to-head on London, and London have 2 away games. And if Keltern win one of their remaining games, London could finish 4th. And I think they know that. Yeah. So it's a brutal loss. It's an absolute brutal loss for London. And I just think kind of probably a schedule loss, one whereby they just, Keltern came with 8 players and they probably looked at them in the warm-up and we've beaten this team. Well, but they only beat them on the last shot in Germany. Yeah, so it's not like they could really be justifiably overconfident. But, winning easily on the weekend makes a difference. It makes a difference in the mindset of players. It just means you're a bit looser. Maybe you don't have the appropriate fear, which is what Popovich always talks about at San Antonio. You don't have that. And I just, there was nothing. Keltern weren't better than London. London just missed shots. But that was the one thing. The one thing that came, it was the difference between the men's and the women's game. The women's game is more skillful. And if you're not entirely locked in, then you don't get the cheap points that they get in the men's game.
So on the same night, Casters beat Brno 81-65. So that means the Belgians are 3-1 top of the group. London and Brno are 2-2. But as you say, Lions have to play those 2 teams on the road in their last 2 games. Keltern are 1-3 currently in 4th place. So let's move to the to the men's game, and this one I was able to watch. London Lions 85, Donar Groningen of Denmark 67. And this was fairly low scoring start. It took a while for this one to really kick in, I thought.
Yeah, again, I don't know if it was the psychology of it or anything else. Donar missing a couple of their better players as well. And the one thing that I kind of took from it, because I can't explain why it started slow, it just did, you know. The one thing I kind of took from it was that London have a switch, which was probably very good, certainly for later on the competition, because they flicked the switch in this game. Now that it's never great to have switches because it means you need one. It means you're not going, you're not going to roll over teams. But it's something you can't win competitions without, because it's impossible to sustain 40 minutes of excellence every single game. So you have to know how you're going to change, how you can take things up a notch, and they did. It was a little bit like a cat with a mouse, you know, running.
Let's jump forward to that switch, because Donar had a 10-4 run early in the second quarter. They were up 11. Lions had the last 6 points of the first half to cut it to 5. They were still 4 down 3 minutes into the third quarter, and then boom, they went. Washburn had 5, Majauskas had 7. They had 14 points without reply, and they went to 56-46 in front.
Yeah, and they just kind of wore them down with their talent and their shot making, and even when Groningen were scoring early, they weren't scoring easy. If that makes any sense. London have bouts of sloppiness with their offense. They really do. But those bouts of sloppiness are only tangible because you see it when it's right. You know, you see when they're good.
Yeah.
You know, and therefore you realize when they're not, which is a kind of a good thing to have. But there are times where either their ball handling or their kind of synchronicity isn't where it needs to be. A lot of it again is going through Reese, and obviously they're incorporating Teague into the European games, and Teague's a guy who's going to have to, who by his very nature I think is going to grow into basketball games, because he's somebody who likes to get his rhythm. You can see likes to work out who's guarding him, likes to work out where his mismatches are, and then and likes to take over individually one-on-one. He does shoot a lot of long twos though. I remember noting that in the game. You know, you just kind of step back, kind of 2 feet inside the 3-point line shots, and it's like, really? That's probably not why you're not in the NBA, because they don't like those shots.
They don't like those shots.
But the NBA isn't the FIBA Euro Cup first qualifying round.
No.
And you can certainly get away with that and make some shots. But yeah, I mean, they have this depth and this energy about them when they're flying. It's kind of predicated on Reese, but obviously Dirk Williams is like, you know, sticking a needle in their arm when he's going. Just speeds everything up. And then, you know, Kelly will, you know, fly around for a bit and do all the stuff he does. And you think this team is invincible at times, and then the times you think this team isn't, and it's quite intriguing. It's going to be intriguing watching them, because you know they have a great vibe about them.
They do.
Then they didn't, which they've never had before. You know, I'm talking even when they won the league with Brandon Peel and the Darius Tab and those guys. And obviously last year, you know, that they had, you know, more drama than, you know, Melrose Place and Neighbours, and, you know, the airplane crashing in Crossroads, you know. And this year they just seem to have none of that. They just seem to have a perfect vibe about them. And that's no doubt being built quicker. Teams build quicker through playing games. So playing games in Europe is helping them. At this point of the season, playing games in Europe is a great help. In January and February, maybe not so. But at this point in the time, it's helping them build chemistry, it's helping them build togetherness. They're going away on the road, they're having to play, they're having to get used to each other, they're getting well paid, so everybody's happy and they're winning. And I'm not saying that this out of any, you know, grudgingness or anything like that. You know, it's great. There's no two ways about it. It's great that they are winning. It's great that they're demonstrating that, you know, we have a good product in this country, an underrated product in this country. I'd still like to hear a little bit more from the owners about where they're going to be in 3 years, but, you know, can't have everything.
I had an interesting conversation with one of them a couple of weeks ago, actually. It sounded good. But anyway,
the one thing about this game was there was a decent crowd in there.
Yeah.
There was a bit of noise, and the one thing about playing at the copper box, which makes it difficult when you're a traveling team, is the depth perception and the fact that the seats are all different colours, and there's very few people there. Whenever we've been there, whenever we went down to Newcastle, and it's actually seeing one side loaded up in there was really good, and you could actually hear stuff. The only thing I'd say to the owners, though, is that what they need to do, and this is it came to me, I've been there about, Christ, I must have been there 15 times for games. You only came to be watching the game on the TV yesterday. They need to get some seats behind the basket. They got that big gap. They got that kind of 20 feet gap, 30 feet behind the basket. And I appreciate they can't push the seats up. They need to move those guys closer. They need to create a bit more of an amphitheater. Finals, because at the moment it just kind of they just. They're not going to fill it. I get that, but do everything you can to build an environment where an atmosphere, a closeness to the court. I always thought that made a difference, but I am biased because I spent about 12 years sitting close to the court, abusing. Makes a difference.
So the one thing I would say, young people, ask your nan about Crossroads. She'll explain that reference for you.
I just remember. Honestly, the young people watch this. Young people don't watch this.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Read this, really.
That's a good point. They did get it back to 7, but Kajini 3, Washburn 3's 10-2 run. It was pretty comfortable for the Lions. Beirut beat Kapfenberg 83-79. So Lions 4-0. Beirut are 3-1. Donar 1-3, and Kapfenberg 0-4. So a group of very little drama.
Their social media account got the tweet out about them qualifying very, very quickly. Yeah, very, very quickly. I just wanted to check to make sure they got it right, but they did.
And the first time a British team has made it through to the second stage of a European competition since 2002, when both the Bullets and the Towers made it to the last 16. They called it the second round, but it was the last 16 of the Northern European Basketball League, for those who remember.
That didn't last long, did it?
Didn't last very long.
That was Belgium, Lithuania, and Holland, and Denmark, to my recollection. But whatever.
A ton of games, and God help anybody's knees, Rob Paternostro, who played in all of those games. Over that
he lost. I think he shrank a couple of inches. Then having said that, maybe we're not sure. Maybe
let's move on to the BBL.
True that they banned the headband in that competition, because that really.
I can't remember. I know he had good numbers that year. But yeah, it was. I just remember the schedule. They were playing like Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday. It was a relentless thing. So Friday night in Newcastle, Brandon Peel making his debut for the Newcastle Eagles, who beat the Surrey Scorchers 90 points to 81. Before we get into the game, I'm assuming you were there.
I was actually. Again, two rows behind the Eagles bench. I got a good heckle in on one of the refs for the first time in 13 years.
Nice.
Just when it got quiet. I don't like flop calls,
Been there. So before we get into the game, Andrew Lawrence, 6 minutes in, goes down, looked to be grabbing his Achilles. That didn't look Achilles. That didn't look great. I don't know if you had a better vantage point.
Basically, what happened was about 2 plays before that, right in front of me. He committed a foul on nothing foul on Ramon Fletcher, as Ramon Fletcher was driving past, just a reach-in foul as he was moving through the lane, and he pulled up and he just held his hamstring. And immediately he was like, "Oh, his hamstring's gone," but it clearly hadn't, because he kept going. But it made me think, well, what's up? And then he basically did what Joe Chapman did on Sports Central 10 years ago. He just, he was guarding Fletcher, but he basically just fell over. And I knew it was bad because Ramon immediately went down to him. And that meant that nothing had happened. And obviously we had, Flanoy did his Achilles in the trophy final as well in Glasgow. I've had a bit of history with it. And, I think that the tweak that he probably felt, I'm not a doctor, so this may all be conjecture and nonsense, but I fear that the tweak that he felt early was maybe a problem in his calf, which is then to an overcorrection in relation to his Achilles. Because I learned a lot about Achilles from Flanoy, having to listen to him about them.
Imagine.
And it's all, you feel like you've been kicked and no one's there. It just and it's all about kind of the way that the rest of your leg is, the connections between the rest of your leg. So that's physiology with Forrester. Podcast 1 finished and never again. But it was brutal. It's brutal. He made 2. He looked like he could stroll through the game. He had 8 points in 6 minutes. He made 2 deep threes. To the point whereby I was wondering what the Eagles' game plan was, because he got open shots, and I think Ian called a timeout after the second one because he was so frustrated the fact that Andrew Lawrence is getting to stand there and shoot. But it changes the whole impact of it. Changes the whole game from beginning to end. And it's incredibly harsh because he's missed 2 years.
Yeah.
And whether, only he knows what state his body's in. So I don't think it's even right to come on here and speculate. I don't think it's right. I just hope he gets as well as he can, and I hope he gets a chance to play.
Yeah. So let's go back to the game. And the first real run of the game came around the first quarter break. Eagles 10 in a row. Fletcher had 6 of them, and they opened up a 9-point lead, 29-20.
Yeah, and look, Brandon Peel is potentially, he's not a kind of a saviour season signing, but he's not far short.
Yeah.
His impact in this game was probably determinative. I think he was a plus 18 at half time in about his 10 minutes that he played whilst on the court. His smartness, his ability to set screens, his ability to play defense with his long arms, and his ability to be in the right place really kind of showed what Newcastle have been missing. As I got a retweet on them Twitter, Surrey always seem like they're playing from behind. It was that again, that kind of urgency in Surrey just isn't there. They are a physical, they're a piece of work physically. They have Davis is serious, Hamrick is serious. They are, and I don't mean physical in a bad way. They are athletic, aggressive, physical players. Jameson, a beast on the boards. Big guy. Robertson is just giant. You look at them and you think, hang on, Teo's the one who's the least cut of all of them. And I'm like, gee, sorry, Caelan, beg your pardon, Teo, Caelan. But no, and Teo's never exactly been short of a physique that that many middle-aged ladies would admire. So you're thinking, man, this is a serious team. It's a seriously tough, physical group. But they were a bit betwixt in between in the first half, and then as with teams like that, they play better from behind. Yeah. And what happens is they start being more aggressive. Yeah. And they start attacking the rim, and Newcastle had a bit of foul trouble inside, and Newcastle started giving up layups because they were kind of overwhelming just with their relentless driving to the rim, and they get a couple in transition, and Newcastle really didn't play from up front, play from in front very well.
So I wanted to ask you about that. So Johnson had 5 and 11-2 run. Eagles get up 15 in the first half. Middle of the third quarter, 61-45. Scorchers then had a 15-3 run. Davis and Jameson pushing them along, cut it to 5. And I just wonder, given the season that the Eagles have had so far, whether there was any sort of nervousness around.
I think there was a degree of uncertainty. I wouldn't necessarily say, I'm not sure amongst the fans, because to be honest, I'm not sure that the fans generally make noise. I don't think, and they're certainly not on the team's back at the moment. You've got, Peel's just come in, he got heroes welcome, and everybody, but still coming to terms with the new guys to a certain degree. But basically, every time Surrey got close, their defense broke down, and this is a kind of a recurring theme for them. Fletcher, they did a good job with Fletcher because they hounded him, with physical defenders. And he still had 11 assists, but I think they held him to 6 of 20 or 6 of 19 or something like that. And he was antsy all night. They were hammering him. He was getting fouled. He got 8 or 9 fouls called on him before he should have had 13 or 14. So he's talking all night. And so there's a little bit of there's a bit of urgency in the Eagles that hasn't really been there, which we'd expect from a team that was 1-8 for the season. Yeah. But Fletcher found Johnson. Johnson is really begin to demonstrate a kind of an all-round game, which he probably didn't even show at Leicester, probably because of the role that he had at Leicester. And there was times in the fourth quarter where Fletcher was simply dribbling the basketball wherever he wanted until Johnson got open and he was throwing it to him, and Johnson was nailing the three, and they're almost playing on their own. And they dropped. I mean, a couple of times they made some horrendous defensive mistakes coming off Johnson, coming off the shooter. And it's interesting this game because the other thing is Sayers played well. He didn't score the ball much, if anything, but he's back and he looked healthy as well. So Davis was a +9 for Surrey. I mean, the positive thing about them is that, you know, Davis was +9 in the game and they lost the game by 9, which is a lot about the minutes he didn't play. He is just a little bit, you know, as a lead ball handler, he's going to give you everything good and bad. I'm not necessarily sure he's going to have to win for that team to win games. He's going to have to tune out the bad. Yeah, I'm not sure he's capable of that but he's very talented. I mean, he had 25 points in this game. He got to the rim at will. He pulled up and made a couple of threes near the end. There's no point screaming your head off when you make a three to go down by 6 with a minute to go. And he's just going to have to, the one thing he's going to have to give them is a little bit more stability, and I'm not sure that's that's his best asset. I think he's got a lot of assets, but and that will help. That will mean that they're going to struggle to win on the road. It doesn't mean they'll struggle to win at home. I think they can win some games at home. And now that Lawrence isn't there, they have no other way of playing. So if they can manage to come out aggressively from the start and without kind of shrug off their inhibitions, not really worry about anything other than just playing hard in 40 minutes of hell, as opposed to thinking about who's getting the shots to start with. They could be successful. Well, let's say successful. They could win some games.
So just to tell our Eagles were double figures. Scorchers got it back to 6 midway through the fourth quarter, and then Johnson a 3 and a 2, back out to 11, pretty comfortable. Johnson 5 of 8 from 3, 27 points. Fletcher 19, 11 and 7. Yeah,
I mean they were both on. I mean they're both on. It's kind of weird. I'm going to talk about a bit later with one of the other guys as well. But players who played, there's a difference with players who played for winning programs in how they respond to losses to players who never played for winning programs. And obviously Newcastle had a lot of losses. And Johnson's come from Leicester where they didn't lose much. Fletcher's obviously been in Newcastle where they haven't lost much. And the response from those guys is indicative, I think, of their upbringing in the BBL. And when you sign players, you have to take that into account. Not just have they been winning teams everywhere. Have they won in the league? Do they have the institutional knowledge? Do they have the knowledge of the league to have won? Do they have the pride to know that it's not okay to keep losing, shrug your hands and say it's somebody else on the team's fault? Because those guys could do that if they wanted, and they don't. The other thing that was interesting was Peel finished the game. So the game was an 8-point game, 5, 6, 7-point game with 2.5 minutes to go, and Peel was in the game. And Peel was put in the game at that point. So clear what coach thinks of him, even though he's only been there 4 days.
Let's move on to Manchester Giants 88, Sheffield Sharks 89.
Rodney, I see you, Rodney. The work I did for your passport, young man.
Yeah, there you go. He wouldn't be here without you. I obviously was doing the TV game, so I actually managed to watch the last 30 seconds of this in real time, which was absolutely bonkers. The rest of it, I watched whilst queuing for Nemesis at Alton Towers on Saturday. So my take might not quite be as accurate as yours.
I go on Towers. I go into one of those special hotels, and they give us a special pass to go specially through all the things and just specially avoid the queues. But that's what happens when you're.
No, I wanted the queues because I had a lot of games to watch, so it was my best way of catching up.
I once signed a player on Facebook. I once signed a player on Facebook Messenger in the queue for Space Mountain.
There you go.
Victor Moses.
There you go. Good signing.
The wife didn't know, but it was a long queue, and then we had nothing else to talk about. So the agent was messaging. Very interesting.
Well, my son was going, we're at Alton Towers and you're still watching. I'm like, we're in the queue and I've got 5 games to catch up on before tomorrow. So
people don't realize, do they? There's no sympathy out there in the Twitter sphere in relation to the amount of.
And don't get me started on how. Don't get me started on how rubbish the signal is at Alton Towers as well.
Not good, is it?
Oh no, my goodness!
I agree.
And they're free Wi-Fi stops at certain places. Anyway, let's get into the game. It's
almost like a country park full of gardens and big.
It almost is like it.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, good fireworks though.
3 miles campsite.
So the Giants get up early. They're 13-6 ahead, but Rotino a couple of threes, Sharks go on a 12-0 run, got themselves in a rhythm.
Yeah, and this is a game that Manchester have to win, so I wasn't surprised that they went to Perth. The reason they had to win is because they were coming off that horrendous loss last week.
Yeah,
being punched in the face, and at that point they've got to punch back. And basically they did. They made the plays that they needed to make in this game. Sheffield stayed in it because Sheffield made a ton of threes. But all the time you felt Manchester were getting good looks, that they were in a rhythm. And they blew it. Is the only way of saying this game. That's not to take away from the things that Sheffield did right, because Sheffield are solid. Bennett Cook looks like he's had some form of almost religious rejuvenation, but I don't believe in God, so it can't be that.
Basketball gods,
yeah, because he's gone from literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, you're looking like he was just going to be calling the Samaritans after a game to the point whereby he's absolutely playing out of his skin, and aggressively. And I think, and again, and shout out to the 2 commentators at Manchester, Dave and Jason, outstanding job. It's almost like I don't need to recap the game because Jason's telling everybody what's happening, what else is going on. Cook playing really well, them getting early, good minutes from Glasgow early, gave them 2 threes and a pull-up jump shot, and that kind of takes a bit of pressure off Anderson. Atiba clearly likes Rotino because he plays lots of minutes, and then the big guys kind of just rotate in and out whenever Atiba thinks it's right. The interesting thing, the first 2 minutes of this game, I remember watching back, is that I think after a minute and a half, Williams got pulled, and he was on the bench, and Tuck was talking to him on the bench because clearly the coach had seen something he didn't like, and I think it was to do with who he was guarding, and I can't remember. I watched it at the time, I figured out what it was, but I can't actually remember what it was now. He gave up. He may have given up a couple. He gave up certainly 1 open 3, which didn't go, and then he gave up easy penetration. And so Atiba sat him down, then brought him back 30 seconds later, which is it, and brought Hank Coke out at that point. Which is, it's always interesting to see how players react to that, because it's because he wasn't happy walking down the bench, and Mike Tuck was sat next to him talking to him, and he's kind of if there's kind of a, it's not, I don't think he's a loose cannon, but he's a kind of a cannon which Atiba's keeping his eye on to make sure he's pointing in the right direction all the time. Does that make sense? Because he's one of those guys who I think can help them win a lot of games. But he's young, and he's a rookie, and there's things he won't have seen. But all the young guys who are rookies think they've seen everything they've seen. In fact, they don't have the 15 years of knowledge that Atiba has, and in the 12 years that Mike Tuck has, as to what they have to do into the detail to win games. So that was interesting, the way that he's managing that group now. But then, basically, as I say, Manchester had multiple opportunities to blow this game out. Jack Hudson kind of struggled a little bit when he came in at the end of the 3rd quarter, and they went on a little run then. But they were 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, it looked like they were. It looked like they were going to be comfortable. It looked like one of those games where they were never quite going to get away, but they were going to end up winning by 7 or 8 points in the end. And 5 minutes to go, 82-73. Dan Clark fouls out on a technical foul.
Well, and this is harsh, but this game was on Dan Clark, and I think the way he played tonight actually demonstrates that he realizes this game was on Dan Clark, because the technical foul he fouled out on, the 4th foul was a bit of a weak call, but he did have a hand on his lower end. I watched it back. He had a hand there. It was a late call. I can understand why he was frustrated by it. But 3 weeks beforehand at Newcastle, he had 3 fouls in the first half, and he decided he was going to wave his finger in the ref's face. And he got a technical foul. And I think we commented on it then. It didn't matter because they were playing Newcastle's under-19 team, and they were, or most of them, and they won by 40. 5 minutes to go in a game where you're up 9. Now, his technical foul in this game wasn't kind of an instantaneous reaction to a call, because I understand that from players, and I don't like it when refs call technicals too quickly. This was a Paul Williams in the cup final technical, whereby he the ref went the other way, went around, lined up for foul shots, and right in front of Steve Ferris, 30 seconds after the call had been made, he's looking at the referee going, no. Well, I mean, you can't do that. He knows he can't do that, because it's already happened to him once this season. Yeah. And unfortunately, and that was the kind of the first domino, and that has an impact on everybody else in the team. It's not just the fact that he's not on the court; it has an impact on everybody else on the team. Our leader, our talisman, is just done something dumb, and has impacted that, and isn't quite right. And these are conversations you always have. It's why being the best player is always the hardest job. Because it's not just about how you play, it's about how you lead, and it's about what everybody else thinks of you. And you've got 9 guys looking at you, and you've got to be able to handle that burden all the time. And Dan Clark can handle that burden. Of course he can, because he's been there. But he's also not oblivious to the fact that he's a British player who's played at a high level, who's coming back to our league. And British players who played at a high level who come back to our league don't necessarily understand what it is they're getting into. Not the basketball. Basketball's fine, but everything else that goes on around that immediately. They've heard so many different things from so many different people about what's going on in the league, whether he's a player, whether the standards rubbish, blah, blah, all of this stuff. The refs are awful, all of this stuff. But until they see it for themselves and figure it out, they don't have it. And he just blew a gasket in this game, and it cost his team. So that said, they still should have won.
They still should have won. So let's so Nichols, Rotino, some foul shots, chip away. Giants couldn't score. Let's get to the last 30 seconds, which I did watch in real time. But this was Keystone Cops, Keystone Cops finish. So Armstrong, nice move down the lane, little floater, 28.6 seconds to go, makes it a 4-point game.
That should be
88-84, and as you say, that should be it. Sheffield call a timeout, advance the ball, almost turn it over on the inbound.
That's right.
Managed to keep hold of it. Swings round. Williams hits the 3 with 18.6.
Did swing round, but it was a very easy 3 to give.
It was an easy 3.
It was McKnight, I think, just pinched
by swing round. I've probably oversold that.
It was one punch dribble to the middle. Yeah. By it must have been either Anderson or Glasgow. I couldn't tell you. One punch dribble to the middle, then a pass to McKnight, a pass to Williams, and McKnight had overhelped.
Yeah.
The big thing is you're up 28 with up 4 with 28 seconds left. It's a possession game. You don't give up a 3.
Yeah.
You don't give up a 3 because if you make foul shots as long as you want to win the basketball game, but a 3 changes the dynamic of the whole game because even if they foul you, they've then got a shot to tie. So the first thing you're doing is you're really pushing out on the 3. You're hoping someone's going to chuck up a bad 3 because they want one.
Yeah.
And they gave up an in-rhythm shot to a guy who can make shots off one pass. So that was poor. That was bad defense. It was a good. You got to make the shot. It looks like a good shot, but it's bad defense.
Yeah, it's one of those shots that when he catches the ball, you think he's going to make this.
Yeah. It's these guys nowadays, and it's probably NBA related. They all have spots where they shoot the ball well from. It's generally the kind of the elbow extended, the wing. That spot is one of the spots. Is the corner because that's where you reverse the ball from the corner. When the ball goes to the corner, the next pass comes back to that spot to make sure the players have enough space. And he thought he was going to make it, and he did.
So. Manchester, with 18.6 seconds to go, have the ball on the end line. The referee had a very slow count on that 5 seconds.
This was a tough one. It was a timeout call. He got a timeout beforehand, didn't he?
No, because it was. It did. Yes, sorry, but it was still an end line ball.
Yeah, and I played with this one in my mind, and I'm thinking, I think he got it right. I think he had to go end line. It's a difficult one because. They're going to have to. It's a 1-point game, and they're going to have to shoot the ball if they move the ball up to half court for 14 seconds. Difficult one, but I think I would have probably.
I thought it was the right thing. They couldn't get the ball in. It must have been 4.95 seconds and even then they got the ball in. Put it that way. They then almost turned it over twice. Yeah. Almost had an 8-second violation.
I think they
almost.
Did.
almost turned it over a third time, and it gets knocked out of bounds. And somehow, out of all of this chaos, they end up with the sideline possession.
Yeah,
Manchester.
I thought it wasn't a second violation, and I'm ready to be corrected on this by Diane of FIBA rules. But no, I thought you have to have control of the ball into the half of the court.
Yes.
It's not a question of just kind of flinging it over in the visible
halfway.
No,
it has to be with somebody.
And they never had control of the ball, and there was 14 seconds on the shot clock.
Yeah.
So it was an 8-second violation. I don't know how the refs managed. I think the refs blew that call, and I think Atiba was pointing that out at the time.
Although if the defender deflects it, that counts. Which is what happened. The defender deflected it out of bounds. So at that point, the ball is established in the front court because the defender's got a hand on it.
But the defender deflected it out in the back court.
Deflected it backwards, though.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case,
but
right.
It was very close.
Referees,
one way or the other, it was very close.
It was very close. Well, anyway,
but Manchester appear to have dodged a bullet because they could have turned it over 4 times.
And that's right. And then they blew it again because they had an advantage which they didn't understand, which was because the ball was being taken out in the back court, they didn't have to throw it forwards. And they didn't, and they all set up in the front court like it was a front court out of bounds. Now you see this in the NBA because obviously in the NBA you can throw it anywhere. From anywhere from your own court. So you end up the players are stretched out all over the court, and the coaches have their fantastic board and they're doing all this stuff. And this was one where they could have done that in the back court to get the ball in bounds, and they wouldn't have the problem getting the ball in bounds. But they didn't realize they started all their guys in the front court. He has to throw it forward. He's got a bad angle because he's in the back court for throwing it forward. He's got very few areas he can go. And it got crowded as well because the big guy, because he couldn't get the ball straight away, the big guy came up, maybe an artisan, or I can't remember who was in the game. Big guy came up as well, which meant that the guard had to get around him, and Armstrong got around him, the Sheffield guy trailed him, and he put his foot on the line. It was, but a point guard who's, maybe not a rookie point guard, just runs straight into the backcourt and gets the ball.
Yeah.
He didn't do that, and that hurt him. He didn't need the curl. Just run as fast as you can, sprint and catch the basketball, then he's fouling you, and you make shots to win the game.
So Sheffield get the ball back with 6.7 on the clock. Obviously, they advanced the ball after a timeout, and they almost turned it over. To be honest with you,
Manchester. I don't know what they were running, but they basically struggled to get the ball in bounds. They ended up, after 3.5 seconds, in the middle of a pretty deadly double team, 35 feet from the basket in the corner on the wing, and you would say I've actually freezed it on the telly at the time after on the replay, and it's like, they're not scoring from here. No chance. This player's dead. You've got them exactly where you want them. And to be fair, 2 things happened. One, Rod Glasgow made a smart move, but that's before he caught the ball. Took him down a little bit lower, popped up to make a pass, right? And Josh Steele fell asleep. And he didn't fall asleep in a way which I don't know what's going on or whatever. Just a split second, he straightened up, he stood up. He didn't get in the passing lane. He could have took the passing lane away. If they'd had to throw a lob to Rodney Glasgow, that's not happening.
No.
So at that point, when the trap is on the wing, if Josh Steele steps in front and just gets his hand in the lane, that's a deflection or a steal, and it's game over. Alternatively, you let him catch the ball, but you're in a stance and you don't give him any momentum, and he's in front of you and he's got to chuck up a tough shot off the dribble with a hand in his face, which, if you're a coach, you kind of live with. But what happened was, because he stood up, he wasn't in a stance. He got, by Glasgow maneuvering up, made Steele move. He stood up. He didn't figure, I don't know if he'd forgotten the scouting report, but Glasgow's left-handed. One dribble and he's totally out. He's totally beaten. Out
of the game, yeah.
Totally beaten, and that can't happen in 5 seconds. You have to be solid. So for all the guys, Rodney didn't make a move which was, he didn't shake him out with shoes or anything like that. It was just one hard dribble to his strong hand. Now McKnight plays good defense, and McKnight comes over and tries to rescue Steele out of that situation, and Glasgow just makes a tougher shot.
Yeah,
but he should never have been in that situation where he could make that shot. And all credit to Rod for making the shot. He only ever played about 7 games for us, and it really frustrated me at the time, because I really thought that he could really be an impactful player in the BBL. And of course, the last game we played, we won the trophy. But all credit to him for making that shot. You need to have cojones to do that.
And because of the defender coming over, he had to put it up high as well. It wasn't
a touch, Scott.
Yeah.
It was a shot by holding of a scorer, guy who can score. But it wasn't a play which was run for him.
No.
He was basically stood in the corner waiting to see if someone dropped off him.
Yeah.
And instead he reacted to something quicker of mind, and had the ability to finish the shot. But if you can't give that up. You played defense brilliantly, and as I say, it's just one little slip. Josh Steele, just 1 second, just not doing what he needs to do. Bang, and there's the game, and that's professional basketball, and it's a cruel sport.
It is, and a great one at the same time. You saw the way Sheffield celebrated. It's a fantastic victory for them.
Oh, it was. I mean, that was a schedule loss for them. There's no way they can expect to win that game, given coming after what happened last week. And the reality is that they've, I think they're probably their ceiling's been raised by Glasgow quite significantly, definitely. Probably from maybe top 6 to maybe top 3, top 4. Once you're in that top 3, top 4 schedule. And I'm not saying that just because of 1-2 games. It's just the balance that he gives them on the floor, the second creator that he gives them on the floor. Once you're in top 3, top 4, that means you can beat anybody. Now, whether you're going to win or not, it's different kettle of fish, but it means you can beat anybody. And I think that they may be at that point now.
Yeah. They certainly look a tough prospect at the minute. Let's move on to the TV game, Sky game. London Lions 113, Cheshire Phoenix 74. No Dickinson, no Neighbour, no Josh Ward-Hibbert. Justin Robinson was back, which was great to see after that ankle injury suffered at the end of this last season. Now, I don't know if you saw it. I think BBL Fix retweeted it on Friday night, but there was a tweet out of some random publication somewhere or other saying that Cheshire had turned down a buyout for name on right to go and join a Romanian club or something or other.
I didn't see it, but I had heard it. I saw a couple of other tweets which kind of
suggested it.
Move around it as well from people who generally probably shouldn't be tweeting about it.
Yeah. So I just throw that out there because obviously that can be something or nothing, can have an impact and might not have an impact, blah, blah, blah.
Just so people understand, we've talked a little bit about, cut clauses, as it were, in the league. Once a contract is a standard BBL contract, i.e. one that hasn't got anything extra negotiated in, once a contract has gone past that 8 games or 60 days, then it's to be upheld by both sides. If a player wanted to be out at some point, you have players who say we'd like an out clause in a contract. And that I don't think we ever had any, but that does happen where agents say, well, he'll come and play for you, but if you want to have either a free out or a buyout out. So there might be some of the contracts saying you pay £1,000 and you can have him. Then you can buy him out, that type of thing. Didn't, as I say, it's not something.
Presumably, Ryan Richards has always got something like that.
Yeah, you'd guess that.
Or an agreement of some thingy.
But other than that, then it becomes a balancing act for the club and the player. In relation to the club has to make a view. Well, we need a guy here because we can't get a replacement in for a couple of weeks or whatever, and we've already paid out money in relation to visas and flights and that type of stuff, which we're out of pocket. So we'd like that back, please. But you also have to be careful about not, have to be aware of what the mindset of the player is. Is the player set on going away, or is he just?
Here's the thing: if the Romanian club is offering triple his money, then he's going to want to go. He's going to want to go there, or double his money, or whatever the thing is.
Let's be honest.
He's going to want to go there.
Yeah, let's be clear. I mean, this kind of there's nothing out there officially about this. So
I
don't want to get into. I don't want to get too much into gossip about it because.
But my point is, if that's out there, that can impact on the dynamics of a team and whatever.
Well, big time,
let's just park that, move into the game.
I don't think that affected the game.
No, it doesn't. But it's one of those things that, having seen that before the game, you're watching and you're going, oh, I wonder. But Cheshire basically played no defense in this game. So
I mean, Cheshire. I just don't know if Cheshire had some changes made. I don't know if they know what they are. They've got Dickerson appears to have gone, but I don't think there's been an announcement. I haven't heard any announcement of him going, but he appears to have gone. He hasn't been seen for a week or two. They've got Bakali, Ocherobia, and Bradley, all of whom could play the 5. Bradley isn't a physical presence, but he could play the 5. And if Dan Clark's playing the 5, Levi Bradley could play the 5. But they've now brought in Ben Mockford, who isn't the guy you sign if you want someone just to stand on the wing and throw the ball inside. Naaman Wright also is shooting the ball a lot from the 3-point line. And Josh McSwiggan is standing out there. So you've got a lineup where they're very small with Josh McSwiggan at the 4, or you've got a lineup where they're giant with Levi Bradley at the 4. And you've got a post guy in Bakali who really needs the ball thrown to him. Bradley needs touches. Ocherobia is going to probably more suited to playing with the guards because he will just screen and roll. And they're kind of betwixt and between. We've got Kyle Carey as well, another guy who's attacking. And I'm just not sure that they've got an identity, and I think that hurts them, The one thing I watched it back, but I watched it back at about midnight on Friday night. So, I have to say, sorry. I knew the score as well, which also...
I'm amazed you watched it back knowing the score.
Got to do my research, Dan. The only thing that struck me was that Cheshire didn't start right or Bradley in the second half. Started 5 Brits in the second half, and that said to me that there shouldn't ever be kind of thing. You shouldn't ever worry in a fan's world. There's no concept of passport differentiation and how that affects the different statuses of the players. But in a team, there is. The players know, even if it's never talked about. The Americans know they're Americans, and the Brits know they're Brits, and there's something. It might not even be talked about, but there is something. And not starting right in the second half, that was the one thing which made me think, oh, hang on, something. What's going on here? Because Naaman Wright can score the ball, and difficult to see how they're going to score the ball enough without him on the court. But you're right, their defense wasn't there. Then they haven't got a great. But as I say, if you start, Josh McSwiggan's not a great defensive 4. No, he's a wing defender. Bradley, a bit wispy. I would probably say defensively. He doesn't block as many shots as I think he should for someone with his width. And London are very, very good. Yeah, they are very good. Dirk, it's just, I mean, it's all right saying, they didn't play any defense, but Dirk is making shots off 1 foot or 15 foot runners off the baseline off 1 foot. And also Chester got absolutely stuffed by the fact this was a TV game. So London, the lights are on, And Dirk came out and absolutely, just played incredible basketball. And they didn't have the bodies to survive with that. So again, it's a passport differentiation thing. But Cheshire playing with 2 Americans, London playing with 4 Americans, and that you think that shouldn't make a 40-point difference? No, it shouldn't. But it does impact the depth you have available to you because London's Americans are their main guys. If you're, and London's British players are probably comparable to Cheshire's British players, but they're not playing, because the coach doesn't think they're quite as good as the Americans he's got. It's a tough night for Cheshire.
Second half, the only question was whether Jordan Williams would get a triple-double or not.
Yes, Lasker.
Sent him back into the game for the one layup that he needed.
Yeah, Lasker said something halfway through the third quarter about Jordan Williams being their second best creator, which I entirely agreed with. And I entirely agreed with it, which is what I told him 2 days beforehand. But anyway, it's all right. He's going to give me a credit on the BBL show. I think some people are still watching that stuff, I think. No, good job, Drew. Good job, Kieran. No, he is. He's Jordan Williams, his growth might be the biggest thing to come out of London's season from a kind of a domestic setting, because he's the one guy that Vince is trusting with playing significant minutes, both in Europe and in. He started the game in Europe. We didn't talk about it, but he actually started that game last Wednesday night. Ahead of Kelly, and. If he was 6'9", he would be a EuroLeague player. I've no doubt in my mind with his skill set. But he's 6'6", and it'll be interesting to see if he gets any kind of GB recognition. There's a window coming up, but he's certainly pushing himself out there because you get the feeling he can post up guys who are 3 inches taller and move them. You know, so great job, Jordan Williams.
He did get his triple double in the end, so he had
Signed
11.
about 9 years ago, but he didn't want to come.
No, I understand that.
Jordan.
11, 11, and 10 he had.
Think of what you could have been, Jordan.
Yeah. The Kelly at the end, worth mentioning, because the kids behind me were going absolutely wild with those 3-pointers that he was making at the end. Dirk Williams, 22 points. He was 9 of 12 shooting. Kelly, 19 points, 3 blocks. Robinson, he not quite got his legs, but he looked pretty.
Robinson
Justin
also,
Robinson out there, didn't he?
He's also a ceiling changer for them. He changes this from winning a lot to winning it all.
Yeah,
and that's his. You know, they can win a lot without him, and they can win it all with him because he gives them that little bit of understanding of what's going on in the league and how important certain games are, which could easily slip under the radar otherwise. And it was great to see. He didn't, to be honest, he didn't miss a beat. He didn't look much different to Justin Robinson. I think they've gone slow with him, to be fair, which is good. But he didn't look anything different to Justin Robinson, who's lit up the league for 3 years. So that's great news as well.
It is, let's go to Saturday night, and obviously this was the point at which I am in Alton Towers, and the fireworks are on. Anyway,
I was watching a WBBL game at Newcastle Arena, which nearly didn't, the Virtue Motors Arena, which nearly didn't take place because it appeared that only one referee had been assigned to it. So the word went out.
Did you get the whistle?
Well, sadly, I'm unaffiliated.
T-shirt like me.
Sadly, I'm unaffiliated, and they found someone slightly more competent than me. And I had an 8-year-old daughter sat next to us who just wanted sweets and pop. And really did everything but watch the game. But there you go. So, but I did watch a bit of it on my phone when she wasn't taking it out of my hand and turning it off because she thinks I watch too much basketball. Could you imagine?
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. Right. What is really true? Of course, it's something true. So I did watch a bit. I watched the fourth quarter of this back, but I didn't really watch much of the 3 quarters, to be absolutely fair.
Knicks had an early lead. Evans and Delpesh took it back for Bristol. Then we had a spell where Motford and McSwiggan were hitting threes. Knicks went on a 19-3 run to regain the lead up 8, 30 to 22, and it was a game a little bit like that, but then Flyers had a 12-2 run around half time, got themselves in front and just sort of edged away, and Knicks didn't really have enough offense to quite get themselves back.
And this was kind of a game that I formulated that previous opinion about not them not knowing quite what they are, Cheshire, because they were in the basketball game. You know, Mockford made enough shots, despite the fact that, you know, Teddy was 1 of 10, which is hard. You know, he had 9 rebounds, 10 assists or whatever, but it's still hard to win when your point guard is 1 of 10. He's playing basically every minute of the game. But they had enough going on. But you didn't ever, if I asked you now, who was their go-to guy, you tell me.
Cheshire?
Yeah.
I'd probably give it to Teddy and let him make a decision.
Yeah, but in relation to
not really,
that's not being a question. That's not, no, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, where are we going to go to get a basket? Where's Teddy going to throw it? I suppose that's basically the point. Where's Teddy going to throw it? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't think and I don't think they do either. And they need some probably definition of roles to a certain degree. And that's hard because you've got what we talked about with Wright, and you've got Mockford just come in. And I like your line about 2 technicals and 2 games on Friday night, man. That got me a chuckle. Thank you. You see, I do listen. I do. Don't make this shit up. Sorry. So Teddy, they haven't got a go-to guy, and that cost them, I thought. Whereas Bristol are different. Bristol are fun, and I haven't said that for a couple of years. I actually enjoy watching them because I'm still trying to figure them out. I think they're still trying to figure themselves out. But what I like is that this guy Evans is a bit of a live wire. I haven't quite worked him out yet, because he appears to be a point guard with a shooting guard's mentality in a point guard's body. Now Andreas's playing was a point guard, albeit I think, and actually started him in this game and didn't start Miller. And I like Miller. I really like I like what I've seen on Miller, but he came off the bench. And logic,
didn't play much either.
No, he didn't. He played 20 minutes. And the logic is like you look at that group and you'd think we'd start Miller, we'd start Evans, we'd start Jacob at the 3, then probably Josh Rogers at the 4 because he's playing out of his skin. and one of the big guys at the 5, and it was Delpesh, and Delpesh killed him in this game.
Yeah, he did.
You know, and they worry him because Cheshire's got a 7-footer, and they got Mike Ocherobia, and Malcolm Delpesh going off at 26 points, so that's a problem.
22 shots as well.
22
I
shots.
say shots. Most of them were dunks, I think.
They were, but that goes to show a little bit about, you know, where they're going. They know where they're going. They're, you know, that's it. You know, it's very rare, and you know, they shot 14 threes in this game. Bristol, they only made 3. And it's rare in the BBL that you've got a team with that degree of poise that knows that the big guy's going to get 22 shots, because that means the little guys are passing to him.
Yeah.
Normally in the BBL, you know, you pass to him the first 2 times down, and you forget about him until he stops the shot. You know, and then he runs around and maybe he gets a quick cheap one in transition, but you don't feed him with 22. You don't feed him 22 shots. So that was kind of encouraging for Bristol. The other thing about Bristol, which is really interesting, is Raphael Thomas Edwards, because he's their bellwether. When he plays well, they struggle. They play well, and Andreas is kind of shuttling in between the 3 and the 4 spot. And he's playing quite a lot of the 3 spot, and he's not in any way, shape, or form an archetypal BBL 3. You know, he's anything but. He's kind of hefty. He's big. He's got a bit of something off the dribble. He can shoot the 3, but he kind of has to load it up. You know, he's not Dirk Williams.
Yeah.
You know, you probably pick 2 entirely different types of guys, but he is playing really effectively. You know, and at one point I think he picked on, I think it was Josh McSwiggan or something like that. Just straight, you know, one dribble straight to the rim and finishes at the rim, and he's playing a lot of minutes. And Josh Rogers is playing a lot of minutes, which means that the lineup, which you know, I would have expected to see, looking at the roster, which is, you know, Jacob at the 3, Miller and Evans, isn't really happening. No. And in fact, instead, they're playing kind of a little bit of bully ball with Delpesh and the other guy, Simmons, wasn't playing this game, but Delpesh and Thomas Edwards, who are getting to the rim and beating teams at the rim. And if that's the way they want to, that's their identity at the moment, you know, and then Evans is every so often going to kind of dribble the ball into a pull-up 3. But having that identity, I think, helped them in this game, because it meant that they knew where they were going at the end. And they struggled a little bit at times with but you're going to get that. You got 3 new Americans in the league, and they're finding each other and fitting in with each other.
Let's move on to today's game, starting down in Plymouth. Plymouth City Patriots 74, Newcastle Eagles 99. Now, I've not really seen much of this game in between my dad taxiing and doing the.
I was at the arena game. I was back at the arena again, watching the under-14s Eagles kids play.
But obviously, the Patriots have signed Kofi Josephs and Earl Graham Bell, so it gives them a bit more. A lot more. Yeah, gives them a lot more. I was going to say depth, but actually,
no,
they've come off the bench today. I think this will be the one and only game they come off the bench, would be my sense.
Yes, almost certainly.
That being said, it goes from 7-11 to 7-23 with Johnson and Peel hitting 3s to top and tail the run, and that was basically the run of the game.
The game was done. These Plymouth, this Plymouth started Isaiah Walker and Kingsley Okoro at the 4 and the 5. Obviously, neither of them has played much. You know, Adekunle played only 8 minutes in this game. Shelton's not there anymore. Isaiah Walker can shoot it a little bit, but he hasn't proved he can shoot it yet. Obviously, Kingsley Okoro is primarily a defensive guy. And at the beginning of this basketball game, Darius Defoe was deputed to guard Kingsley Okoro. Anybody is interested, it's something we used to do with Darius loads. If he's guarding a non-shooter, he's brilliant. Because, in relation to anchoring a defense, he doesn't go out to them, he doesn't guard them. He knows how far away to be, so he can deal with any screen actions or anything like that. But basically, he is a fifth. He's like for the American football fans, a free safety. For football fans, a sweeper. In the old Catenaccio, Ranieri days. I don't know.
It's the reverse box and one, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the one guy playing zone and the other 4 are playing man to man.
Absolutely, and we did it with D a lot. And I mean, it didn't surprise me. I looked at the stats at the end of this game. And Shelton has 20 and 10 in 19 minutes. Peel has 18 and 10 in 20 minutes, right? Defoe has 4 points on 2 of 8 shooting. He has 3 rebounds. He has 3 turnovers. He's -2 on the performance analysis, and he is +31 in the game.
Yeah.
In 29 minutes. And it's, you know, we all talk about the cliche things that don't show up on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
That's exactly why it happened, because he knew how to do. He knew who he was guarding, who he had to guard, and who he didn't have to guard. And that wasn't, so that number isn't a fluke. That number is, it absolutely, there's nobody else on the Eagles who comes close to that number in that game.
No.
So it's not a fluke. And the knowledge, the learning, the knowledge and the experience of how to defend people in that way, it made a massive difference, because then Newcastle are flying now to a certain degree in their own minds. They won a game on Friday night, which was a relief because they needed to win at home. They got Peel in, who was doing everything the right way they want to do it. They started, brought Pearson off the bench in this game, which I thought was interesting. I think it's probably the right move. I think he's a scorer. And they've started Johnson and Sayers. So Johnson at the 2 and Sayers at the 3. And I actually like that lineup. It gives a little bit more size, and it allows Pearson just to come in and just look to score the ball, as opposed to looking to run things and manipulate people and all that stuff, which I don't think he's best suited for. I think he's a scorer. And they never look back. They got good minutes out. They got decent minutes out of your band. They got good minutes out of Johnson Thompson. And anytime anything was not right, Fletcher was just going to make a shot or make a layup. And you know, it was a little bit like men versus boys the first half. But then again,
you text me say it was 8 points they scored at halftime, the starters for Plymouth, and I looked up the shooting numbers. There were 3 of 18, the starting 5.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? You've got 2 new star signings on the bench, right? You're a pro, and you're looking at thinking, I don't want these guys to get my job. I don't want to take my spot.
Yeah.
Why you brought these guys in, coach? And then you go, and you have 8 points between you in the first half. 5 starters. I mean, that's exactly why I brought them in.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you expect to see a reaction to that. You expect them to say, okay, we're going to play, we're going to ball. And they didn't. And it was as comfortable a win as Newcastle have had in Plymouth for a long time. Yeah. It's also the annual Forrester's glad he retired.
Yes, of course.
Weekend, because I say I'm not now passing some services outside Worcester. Which I would be ready to get home at 2:30 in the morning to get up for work tomorrow. So I'm always thankful. Always thankful this day comes. We always used to play them the first 2 weeks of the season, the league season. We generally always lost because they were ready to play us, and it was always a ridiculous trip back. Just horrendous.
Although Manchester doing their best to give you still be involved in basketball at 2:30 in the morning of Sunday night into Monday morning.
Indeed, thank you, man. Yes. There's a legal letter going out to them about tip-offs.
Let's before we get to that, let's go to a more reasonably timed tip-off. I'm going to say Leicester Riders 83, London Lions 97. I don't know whether it should be the other way around, because obviously this was London's technically London's home game. But it was in Leicester, and it was a good crowd. They sold the tickets for cheap because it was short notice, unexpected home game, and there was a good number of people in. There was a good number of people out in terms of playing. Loving, who did his ankle in the Sky game last week, wasn't playing. Nelson Henry still in the boot. Dirk Williams was there but not playing. Spencer, who got injured in the TV game on Friday, wasn't there. Neighbour and Ward Hibbert, who've not been about in recent weeks, were not there either. So the Lions actually ended up only with 8, but with a really good 8. And Leicester had more players, but were quicker into the younger guys. And I must confess, there was part of me going, there's not really anything riding on this game. If you were looking at Friday's game, you'd probably rather play Cheshire than Sheffield. And obviously the loser plays Sheffield, which,
let's be clear, you'd definitely rather play Cheshire than Sheffield. Sheffield are that way, Cheshire are that way. You're playing the game next week. I did. I mean, the only reason that I didn't frequent Bet365 was because I couldn't work out which team would want to win the least. I'll be blunt, you know, and that it doesn't work like that, because players want to play and players want to win. And you control the players up until the point that you put them on the court, and then you expect the players to go and do their best. And that does happen, you know. Players do not in any way think like that.
No.
But organizations do. That's why we have the tank in the NBA. I remember once Rowe telling that story about how he wanted to win the second leg of a playoff game when they'd won the first leg by 25, and he was annoyed when Rowe took him out.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't care. We were by 25. It don't matter. What are you doing? You know, but that's the way players think.
Yeah.
So players are going to turn up there, and then you've got the younger guys for Leicester who see it's an opportunity to demonstrate that they can get some minutes and they can contribute. And so it's worthwhile. Every game is worthwhile in certain ways.
It was actually a really enjoyable game, and I wasn't expecting that. So the first half was basically all offense. It was I score, you score, I score, you score, and you were thinking, all right, it's the first team to put on a defensive run is going to go ahead, and that didn't actually happen. What happened was in the first, I think it was minute or so of the second quarter, London outscored Leicester 10-5, and it wasn't defense; it's just they got more shots up, and then they got in front and actually kept that going, because then Washburn and Cugini both hit threes, and suddenly they were 15 points up early, with 47 points on the board early in the second quarter.
Well, Cugini's a good guy to have when kind of defenses aren't being prioritized. You know, because he ain't going to miss many open shots.
No, he isn't.
New Latinovic.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, he's open. He's going to knock it down.
And the interesting point about this game, and it's kind of the point that you've just made, is minute into the third quarter, London scored, I think it was first 5 points or something. They were up 19, and Rose says to me, "Oh, I wonder what time Rob sort of goes, this game is gone," and boom. And what happens? The players are like, let's get back into this game. Suddenly everything, Jackson, who hadn't made a shot, suddenly scores 7 points. Leicester go on a 17-3 run. London's offense disappears, and it's a 5-point game.
Yeah, I saw that bit. I thought London kind of offensively became very discombobulated. They relaxed a little bit. I thought Reece kind of became a little bit kind of played the scoreboard, not the game. Some of the shots, you know, that's the I think you mentioned the 9 turnovers. I think, you know, and that's kind of the only knock on him.
Well, he wasn't far off a quadruple double, because he had 17 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 9 turnovers.
He's got a switch. He's definitely got a switch. But the danger of people who have a switch is that if you don't know when to push it, you sometimes push it for them. If you don't know when to push it, then your game can be gone. And by the time the player realizes he's so far in his own head that he can't get out of it. And so that was a real kind of a league game whereby, you know, losing didn't benefit anybody. Then that would have been a different kettle of fish, because his mindset might have had a significant impact, and players can implode. Leicester, I think, there's two things going on in this game. Firstly, Leicester won the last one by 17. So Vince is saying to them, look, we've been here once before. We ain't giving these guys 2 wins. No. London aren't worried about playing it. London just beat 4-0 in Europe. They're not worried about playing Sheffield.
No.
It doesn't make a difference to them who turns up. In fact, I don't imagine you know, Isaiah Reece has been poring over videos of Rodney Glasgow yet. You know, anything like that.
In some ways, it's probably better for them to get Sheffield, because they just beat Cheshire by 40.
Absolutely. And Leicester have a history of particularly difficult close games with Sheffield in Morningside.
Yeah, true.
They really do. There's very few of those games generally are highly competitive. So I don't think Leicester were particularly disappointed that they lost this game. But the players will. But the second thing that will have gone on is that we're at halftime. Rob will have gone through them, which said, "Look, this is bad habits. You know, it doesn't matter whether we're winning, whether we're losing. We're in bad habits here, and we're letting these guys score at will." And Rob, I caught his little minute spiel on Twitter afterwards, which, to be honest, I don't even normally listen to, because I know what he's going to say before he said it. And he actually, for him, was semi-critical of his guys, which is basically never is. Just saying, look, you know, we're disappointed with our first half. Our defense wasn't right. We weren't, you know, we gave up too big a number, all this stuff. And I'm quite sure that was emphasized at half time. And you want a reaction from your players at that point. Now, the problem is that reaction is unsustainable, because that Leicester team cannot spot that London team 15 points. They can make a run, but it's always the run after the run that matters. And that run after the run, you know, you know, they didn't have enough bodies. Ultimately, Rob has to decide, does he want to play Mo Walker 36 minutes to win this game? No, he doesn't. You know, not going. He can't risk that. So you've got, you know, the young guys who did fine,
Yeah.
Ultimately, the young guys can do fine until the fourth quarter, and then if the game's on the
Yeah.
line, you need the other guys.
Yeah.
And you have enough of them.
Because the interesting thing was it was a long time before he made a sub in the third quarter because that
Yeah.
unit was doing really well. They were making the run.
Yeah. He was waiting to see how long it lasted. Wait and see. Wait and see which way to play his cards.
And then start of the fourth quarter, Connor Washington, 8 points, couple of threes, cuts it to a 1 point game, and then that's the point you're talking about. What happens next? What happens next is Lions get the next 6 points, and it's a 7 point game.
He's
and
got the young lad. He's got the two young lads in there. Certainly one of the young lads in the game, and it's tough. I mean, they can play. Those lads can play, but at that point in the time, it's tough. Another one for my another game for my fabled Connor Washington theory about how he always shows up when they're short.
Yeah.
Connor, believe me, if there's a gap to fill, Connor plays out of his skin. He turned up today, made 6 threes in a row. And he's looking and thinking, well, I can't pass it to Darian, I can't pass it to Mark Loving. I'm shooting it.
Yeah.
And it took after the 6-3 before they put Washburn on him.
Yeah.
Now, if you're Rob, you're probably thinking, I would prefer he saved that for the first league game.
Yeah.
So they because in the first league game, it might be 2 before they put Washburn on him, not 6. But no, Connor again showed, I don't know if you can properly say that he's the fourth guard on that team, but if he is, he's the best fourth guard in the history of the big.
True. But to be fair to Leicester, they didn't. Again, that was the point at which you could just, it's done now. Let's go. But Whelan with the dunk, Jordan with a transition. Whelan with the 3, Jordan with the transition dunk, which got the crowd going nuts because he's obviously a local young lad doing well. And it's a 2 point game, but then Reece really again flipped the switch, took the game over. Lions got the next 14 points, and we'll come.
And the turnover, and Patrick Whelan shooting a 3 out of the triple threat position with a guy in his face. They're great shots, they're great players, but they're not sustainable.
Yeah,
it makes any sense, to sustain that. Whereas Reece is getting layups, Tawaya's getting dunks. They're sustainable players.
Yeah.
So I think this game is probably a win-win for everybody. Leicester fill the stadium. London don't have to pay for the copper box. Rob gets to play Cheshire, and London just to rock on and keep going.
Yeah,
happy for everybody.
And as I say, I think it's better for London having just beaten Cheshire last week to not have to play them again next week.
I don't think they care.
Well, they probably don't care, but there's
honestly, I don't think they've got so much the psychology, but I get that. But I just think the only thing that might derail London in that game is if their American guys don't understand that it's a one-off cup competition.
Yeah, true.
That's a big thing. And ultimately, London's target has to be to win all 4. And if your target is to win all 4, because that's what separates you, or to win 3. If you win 3 out of 4, you're the best team. And if your target is to win all 4, then that game becomes an absolutely critical game.
Massive game.
A massive game. And something which maybe the other players who've never seen a cup final before don't understand what it's like with the 15,000, 13,000 in Birmingham, don't understand the hype and how it's valued, because they're not valued in American competitions. They don't get that. That's why Justin's important. That's why Lockhart's so important. Just Jordan Williams, they get that. They know. So they should be really on it. So we'll see.
Right, let's move on to 5 minutes ranting about Manchester moving their tip-off time to 6 o'clock on a Sunday night, thus disrupting the natural order of Sunday night breakdown.
I have no comment.
All I'll say you said it was declaring war on Twitter.
Well, sometimes I've decided that, in the times we're in at the minute, incendiary comment like that is inappropriate, and I should withdraw it. It's the Angela Rayner scum comment. I'll withdraw it. Manchester, I'm on your side again. Just don't ever do that again. I should be watching the Raptors now.
Yeah. They seem to get a decent number of people in as well, so maybe it helps them being a little bit later.
Let's play at midnight and get the night trade. Wait until the nightclubs have been thrown out, shall we?
So
night basketball,
Manchester Giants 99, Glasgow 80, I believe was the final score of this one. Tight first quarter, and then Giants with a 10-0 run. Lewis with the 3 to start it, Armstrong with the 3 to finish it. They get up 29-19. And they were looking pretty comfortable, to be honest with you.
Horrendous break for Glasgow with the schedule. Horrendous. They haven't played for 2 weeks. Manchester have had 2 tough losses in last week. They're absolutely raring to go. They're not going to go 0-3. They're motivated to the hilt. And Glasgow's got a new guy. They're great. and they haven't played a game for 2 weeks, and then they got to go on the road to Manchester. So horrendous. So that was a schedule loss waiting to happen. To be fair, Manchester had to win the game, though. Glasgow didn't roll over. Dan Clark was, again, Jason called it absolutely right on the commentary. Dan Clark took that last game personally, as he should have, but he took it personally in the way he played in this game. And his focus, and it's that word focus again. We started with it, we'll finish with it. Focus is just about the way sometimes you react to things, the way that you let things throw you off your natural path, the way that you are impacted by stuff you can't control. That's all focus. And he was locked into that game from the very beginning, and everybody else kind of played around. And then they got some fantastic minutes from Jack Hudson, who I think also hadn't played that particularly well on Friday night. And he guarded Jordan Johnson probably better than Armstrong did, caused him more difficulties. And he also attacked the rim and scored the ball well. And you know, seeing a kid like that who's been in the England junior system, and he's now playing in the NBL 1, and battled through, and he's run as a career as well. Seeing him come out and play those type of minutes against possibly the top 3 point, certainly top 3 point guard in this league, and impact winning the way that he did, I thought was really great. It shows how hard it is to do that, because there's very few who've done that. Come through the ranks at the age of 28 or 29 and play BBL minutes like that in the guard spot. It doesn't happen. So hats off to him, absolutely. And Glasgow, it's Jordan Johnson, and not everybody else relies on him to create shots at this point in time. Tyrell Green is the new guy. He's a shooter, I think. I don't think he's got much off the dribble. I think he's a guy you're not going to leave open for a second. But he isn't. He's different to Minnie, because Minnie was obviously kind of a kind of athletic wing defender. Tyrell Green's more a stockier kind of say shooter. They've already got Gareth Murray and Fraser Malcolm playing that position. Hillsman played very well, made some shots, but all the good, if Johnson was creating the shot, then they were getting Dallas. If anybody else was creating the shot, they were getting Melrose Place. I'm back on my soap operas. And if Johnny Bunyan, so I'm not going to talk about Johnny Bunyan. Sorry, Johnny hardly played in this game. I thought I was surprised at that as well. The game as much, but it's tough because everybody else on their team is an off the bounce attack the rim or shoot the three. He is the guy who controls everything. And I thought, Lloyd took out Armstrong very early. I don't think he was very impressed with the first couple of plays of defense he played on Johnson, because Johnson got to the middle, created a kick out three for Hillsman, then he missed a three of his own where there was no hand up. And he took him out for about 2 minutes and put Hudson in. And I think that actually changed the game. Changed the game. The game's not been played long enough at the time for it to happen, but it changed the path of the game. Changed the dynamics of the game, and Manchester can score.
Yeah.
Even when they lost against Sheffield, they had 18-9. They got a Will Saunders good game, which is another thing, whereby he's catching and shooting. He's a GB prospect.
5 of 9 threes.
Yeah, but the thing was, I didn't think and Manchester made 14 threes in this game. And I didn't think Glasgow really respected the shooters particularly well. Certainly if Will Saunders is catching and shooting off a screen, he's rolling to the top for his 8th 3-point attempt, and he's still not got a hand in his face, or he's not got anyone trailing him. I'm thinking, really, come on, this guy's killing you, and the only way you can defend him is to get across him and stop him either catching the ball or making his catch uncomfortable. Because as soon as he catches it and he gets in his release, it's going up, and if he's shooting 5 of 8, then that's a pretty good return. And they weren't defending that well. And Harris had a pretty nondescript game, which I think without Minnie, Harris is kind of their X factor. He's the guy who can make enthusiasm players, energy players. You can get to the rim, and Clark probably outplayed Fraser but Fraser had 2 early fouls, which impacted them. Jack Domi didn't really have any impact in the game, and the schedule just got them. So it was a really A really
Jack
good win.
Domney had a terrible plus minus. I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but it was a really bad plus
Well,
minus.
yeah, it's tough because the Fraser's an easy guy to play with because he sets screens, he rolls, he pops to the 15-foot mark, and if you're in trouble with short shot clocks, you can dump the ball down to him, and you'll generally get something good. But he's a very reliable player. He doesn't do things which are kind of out of the ordinary. Jack Domney's more an energy guy. Kind of catches the ball, breaks people down, offensive rebounds, that type of stuff. That can sometimes, kind of throw a team out of sync a little bit. And it didn't fit with him today. But, the thing with Glasgow is, who is their setting guard? And I don't know who their setting guard is. I don't think Harris is a guard. I think he's a forward. I think they're going to have to play Bunyan and Johnson more. They're going to have to play Johnson off the ball more, which probably hurts him a little bit. It may be easier to deny him the ball. But I just don't see their big lineups as being sustainable if it's going to be rely on Johnson playing 37 minutes, having half their assists and being their main scorer or being their second main scorer. And if Johnson's, I think 11 assists out of 24 Johnson had. And they're great plays, he's making great plays, no question. But you have to think probably 3 or 4 of the other baskets are made will be hockey assists whereby he's thrown to somebody else. Yeah, it's all originating with him. It's Fletcher-esque from last year, to be honest. Or not from last year, from the year before. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Kyler Kelly, I was the one who suggested CJ Geddes, only because I actually saw CJ those 2 months. Very few people did because I was coaching him, and he didn't come until after the cup, the end of beginning of November. Then he got injured at the beginning of January. Then he played the cup final, so he only played about 12 games. But he averaged 24 and 13, and he wasn't quite as long as Kelly. He didn't jump off 1 foot. He jumped off 2, but he was the nearest thing. He's still not Kelly, but he was definitely. I thought about everybody else, and just can't think of anybody. He's a remarkable specimen for the BBL.
Yeah, he is. And for those listening at home going, what does that have to do with anything? If you go back to BBL play and you watch Leicester against London, somewhere in the second half, we were talking about who has there ever been a player like Kyler Kelly in the BBL before? I think at that point, where we're pulling out random references, different games commentaries, we've probably reached the end of the evening for.
I think we have, but I can't let it go. You know me, I'm not born, all that stuff.
So I think we're at an intriguing point of the season because there are some teams who look like they're fully formed, if you like, as a team, and there are some that have still got some growing pains to go through.
And there are some who've already kind of gone up the mountain and are going back down the valley and have to come back up the mountain again. That's probably Cheshire. That may be Glasgow. We'll have to see because they've got obviously, and this is kind of the point where reality sets in for all the new Americans. Hang on a minute. We've had our bounce. We've played against the good guys. We've played against the guys who've been here all season, who've been here for years, or have been, the MVP last year, whoever. Who really, I don't think they're very good, or they're not that great. They're not putting too much into it. They're a bit cool. I can walk this league, all that stuff. Well, hang on a minute. Now it starts.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got So the Crandalls and the Fletchers who've seen it before. Are now, they're now building their wave, and some of the guys who haven't seen it before, like your Armstrongs and at Manchester, and I'm trying to think. I don't know about Jordan Johnson. He looks pretty focused to me, but the Bristol guys as well. They're now going to see a kind of a different element to it, and how they all react to that is very interesting. Because teams do not do this in a season. There is nothing linear about a team in a season. No. It's all about making the hills as steep as you can and the troughs as short, as small. Do you have a trough, or is it what's under a hill? The valley. The valleys is, that's right, not a trough. Trough, Jesus. It's 9 o'clock.
Turning your valleys into a trough would be the
solution. If you turn your valleys into a trough, you've got a problem. I suppose at least you're flattened out, but it's still not good. Not a good analogy. So who's going to do that? It's really fascinating. I think it's still London. It's still London.
Yeah, it's still London.
It's still London. London are beat. It's not to win 3. London have to beat themselves at some point, or alternatively, somebody gets a serious injury, which you don't want to see. But I'm more encouraged for Newcastle with Peel. Peel's a perfect fit for them, and I'm still high on Glasgow because of Johnson, but I'm not quite as high. I think they've got to sort out a lot of stuff.
They've also got all that travel stuff as well, so I wonder whether they might be a home team.
That may be right. That may be right. It's tough. I mean, certainly, you know, Ali in particular has always played better at home. He used to kill us at home. And we'll see. You know, I see Gareth was shouting out in Mark Woods' article, thinking, I'm still available for GB. Or start yourself, Gareth. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah. Give yourself
25-point games. Remind Stu to let you hear. You know. That type of thing. But it's interesting because the one thing we've got, and it's, I didn't talk about, sorry, I know it's been going on forever, this podcast, but, you know, Kofi Joseph, Raoul Graham, Brexit. Brexit. You know,
to be fair to Kofi, he's been concentrating on his modelling. He's been
well, if I look like Kofi, I would concentrate on my modelling. If I could draw like Kofi, I'd probably concentrate on my art. If I could shoot like Kofi, I'd concentrate on my basketball. He can do all three. The lottery of life has been won by Kofi Joseph. But everybody, even if you win the lottery of life, you end up in Plymouth. Sorry, guys.
And on that bombshell,
just to say, I would normally be passing Birmingham
on Twitter.
I'd normally be passing Birmingham at this point. I have nothing against Plymouth other than the fact that it is so far away. It's why I don't like France. You know, it's miles and miles away from Newcastle, which is, as we all know,
I think they could say the same thing about you, Dave.
Well, they could entirely say the same thing about me, but they don't have this platform, do they? It's tough, isn't it? No, I'm passing Birmingham at this point. It'd be time for our second stop. Probably driver say he needs another 45 minutes, pushing us back to like 4:30 return. Thank God I'm doing this.
Well, so is Sunday Night Breakdown doesn't go to 4:30 in the morning. We're going to call it. We're going to call it.
Call it now. So. Absolutely.
Hope you all have a great week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next Sunday night. Goodbye.